All right. Happy Sunday to everyone. Glad to have you here. Got a few great, well, I think they're great topics for tonight. I hope you enjoy them. I just sort of enjoy collecting them throughout the week. And let's start off with our opening hymn here in just a second. But if you have questions about God, the Bible, and real life, you can put those in the chat if you are on the live stream, and I will do my best to answer those as we go along. And we're going to be talking a little bit about homeschooling tonight and whether homeschooling is trickle-down stupidity. Viral clip happening this week. I'm also going to do a eulogy that I've waited 7 years to do and talk about somebody that I'm not sure that I've ever really talked about before since the Center for Biblical Unity started. And I'm finally ready to talk about this person and do a eulogy for them. Someone who was very impactful in my life. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between conservatives and progressives in public spaces and some strategy conversations. So glad to have you here. And with that, got a little bit of an unusual opening hymn tonight. Imagine, if you will, Stryper from the late 1980s, early 90s meets Bill Gaither. It might sound something like this.
God sent his son, they called him Jesus. He came to love, heal and forgive. He bled and died to buy my pardon. An empty grave is there to prove my Savior lives. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he holds the future, and life is worth the living just because he lives. And then one day I'll cross the river, I'll fight life's final war with pain. And then as death gives way to victory, I'll see the lights of glory and I'll know he reigns. Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives, all fear is gone. Because I know he holds the future, and life is worth the living just because he lives.
Okay. So did you like it or did you hate it? Kind of different. I know that is AI generated. So all apologies to Bill Gaither and to Stryper. But your girl was a Stryper fan back in the day, used to have some cassette tapes. I may or may not have been playing In God We Trust really loud on my little stereo in my room. But that was that. I never, let's see. Nicole says, I can dig it. I've never listened to Stryper or Bill Gaither. Okay. Now, I might be dating myself with the Bill Gaither reference. That's from my childhood in the 70s. But Elaine says that's my grandma's funeral song. Apologies for that. It didn't have that same vibe when I sang it. No, I'm sure it didn't, Elaine. But to me, I went through all of these versions of it on YouTube, and they're all just so slow. And I thought, this is such a happy song. It should be sung upbeat and happy. And then I found this AI version of it, and I'm like, okay, that's what I'm gonna play. Plus, like I said, your girl really loves Striper. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed the opening hymn. I always enjoy finding those. I'll forgive the use of AI, but I do love rock and good worship. I do too. Yeah, I was a little hesitant about playing the AI music, but yeah. So, all right, let's get into it. So, a liberal podcaster this week had some things to say about homeschooling and homeschoolers and Christians in general. And since I've been a homeschooler and we were a Christian homeschooling family for many, many years, I have some opinions too. So, this is a clip from a podcast called I've Had It. And these two women, probably around my age, maybe like a couple years younger, but not much than me. They're really representing one physical manifestation of the current state of the Democratic Party. And I do want to say thanks to my husband for helping me creatively get around the bad language. So here we go. Here's the viral clip. And then I'm going to come back and comment on it.
You would not believe how many people in Bible study homeschool their kids. And you just think, I worry about that. And then you see those witness booklets or whatever they're called that the Duggars use, and they're like top out at 8th grade. I mean, I just think homeschooling is a bad idea from soup to nuts. I don't care if you're a nuclear physicist. I think it's just that you want your kids around you all day, every day, and all night. And just the socialization. For me personally, it was that I would have gotten up on my hands and knees and strapped them to my back and crawled to get them to school every day, just to get them where I wasn't. So I don't trust somebody that wants to be with their kids 24/7. I think a lot of dumb people do it because it's just easier. And that's a concern. And I've had divorce cases that like moms get mad at dad. They're fighting over whose school district the kid's going to use their address. They put them on homeschool. It's like 2 or 3 hours a day at the computer. And then the kids are going just off to the races. So I just can't think of very many good things about homeschooling.
That was a lot. There's a lot happening in that clip. Okay. I have questions. So my first thought when I first saw the clip was, wait, this woman goes to Bible study? Or is she just saying that a lot of women who attend Bible study are homeschoolers? Not necessarily that she goes to Bible study. I was a little confused, but because I think then my next thought was, what Bible study is this progressive woman attending where there's going to be a lot of homeschoolers? Like progressives tend not to homeschool. They love public school. I don't know. I just like the whole setup confused me. Anyways, now, obviously, homeschoolers are not perfect. You can always look in the news and find crazy people who are on the news that abuse their children and hide under the cover of homeschooling. Yeah, there's weird homeschoolers. There's criminal homeschoolers, just as there are outliers of any group. But the overwhelming vast majority of Christian homeschool families are just normal people. They're just normal Christian families who want to exercise their God-given duty to demonstrate leadership in their children's lives. Like there's just a group of us who read the Bible and we believe it. And the Bible says that we are responsible to disciple and educate our children, and that we should do it when we rise up and when we sit down and when we're out walking on the road. And the modern Krista version of that is when we're driving in the minivan. Like we are discipling our kids. We are leading them. We are the primary leaders in their lives. So yeah, like we're just normal. We're normal people. Okay. So let's just watch the clip again because I really enjoy Kermit the Frog, and then I want to comment a little bit more on this clip.
You would not believe how many people in Bible study homeschool their kids. And you just think, I worry about that. And then you see those witness booklets or whatever they're called that the Duggars use, and they're like top out at 8th grade. I mean, I just think homeschooling is a bad idea from soup to nuts. I don't care if you're a nuclear physicist. I think it's just that you want your kids around you all day, every day, and all night. And just the socialization. For me personally, it was that I would have gotten up on my hands and knees and strapped them to my back and crawled to get them to school every day, just to get them where I wasn't. So I don't trust somebody that wants to be with their kids 24/7. I think a lot of dumb people do it because it's just easier. And that's a concern. And I've had divorce cases that, like, moms get mad at dad. They're fighting over whose school district the kid's going to use their address. They put them on homeschool. It's like 2 or 3 hours a day at the computer, and then the kids are going just off to the races. So I just can't think of very many good things about homeschooling.
This is like this is such a room temperature IQ kind of take on homeschooling. It's like hard to even talk about it and just not laugh because it almost seems like a Saturday Night Live skit. Like it's just so extreme. Okay. Yeah, I actually do like being with my children. I always loved it. I like being around my kids. I'm probably going to enjoy being around my grandkids. I've seen The Village. I don't want The Village raising and socializing my children or my grandchildren. Like I I just have to like say I think it's weird that you don't want to be around your children. You'd rather walk on glass than be around your children. I'm going to say I don't trust people who don't want to be with their kids. That's a weird take to me. She makes this other kind of offhanded comment and claim that homeschooling is just easier than sending your kids to school. Like, reality check. I've been a homeschooler. I've been there. Homeschooling is stupid hard. Okay. It is the most inefficient way to educate a child in the sense that you're customizing an individual education plan for each kid. I don't know what reality she's living in or anything, but like there are so many education options that are easier than homeschooling. I'm confused. Now here is her podcast partner, who's an equally fantastic scholar, and what her comments are when she chimes into the conversation.
The dumbest people she knew in college were homeschooling their kids. And so this is trickle-down stupidity. This is MAGA on steroids. This is Maha. America has a crazy Christian problem. We have a fundamental crazy Christian problem. Now, those of you that are listening that are Methodist or Presbyterian, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the freaks of the megachurch. The dumbest people she knew in college were homeschooling their kids. And
Let's just watch it again.
This is trickle-down stupidity. This is MAGA on steroids. This is Maha. America has a crazy Christian problem.
So we're the problem. You and I, like, we are the problem. The normal people in the room who like being around our kids and we want to take leadership in our kids' lives, and we are just a bunch of stupid, it's trickle down stupidity. We're the problem. And when she says like mega church culture, they're the problems, not the Presbyterians and the Methodists. Like, you know why she's picking those groups, right? Because the PCUSA and the United Methodists, that's all the progressive liberals. They're just like her. They just have Jesus as a mascot. Like she's saying, oh no, we're the normal people. Mega church culture. In case you didn't know it, even if you go to a small church, that's you. She's talking about you. She's talking about me. She's talking about us, the normal Christians. Oh gosh. Like I said, this just seems like a SNL skit. That's really what this seems like. It is so unhinged from reality that I don't even know what to say. Laura says, I'm with you. I'd rather be with my kids than with someone who doesn't want to spend time with their kids. Exactly. Like, that's a peculiar take that you don't want to do that. Trickle-down stupidity. All right, I'm lost because from where I'm sitting, here's the question I have is, what do you call a system, if we're going to talk about trickle-down stupidity, what do you call a system where high school graduates can't read? This is my question. What do you call that exactly?
Some elite university professors are reporting that their students can no longer read books. But it's not entirely the student's fault. To read a book in college, it helps to have read a book in high school. Last year, Atlantic assistant editor Rose Horowitz spoke with professors who told her that their students are overwhelmed at the thought of reading multiple books a semester, and one said his students struggle to focus on even a sonnet. Familiar?
They're overwhelmed by reading multiple books. Well, let me tell you, something went wrong long before that student appeared in college.
Explanations for the decline in reading aptitude include smartphones and social media. Reading books for pleasure, these arguments go, can't compete with the constant stimulation of TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. But Rose's reporting also showed that middle and high school students appear to be encountering far fewer books in the classroom. Educational initiatives now emphasize informational texts and standardized tests, leading many teachers to shift from books to short passages. The goal of this shift was to help students make clearer statements, one Stanford education professor told Rose.
So instead of fixing the problem, we're just going to continue to lower the bar and dumb everything down. That's the translation of that.
But in doing so, we've sacrificed young people's ability to grapple with long-form texts in general. When these students arrive at college, it's not that they don't want to do the reading, it's that they don't know how. No one's ever asked them to. The professors Rose spoke with painted a grim picture of young people's reading habits. One Columbia professor asks new college students what their favorite book is. He told Rose that students used to respond with titles like Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights. But answers have changed in the past decade. Almost half of students now choose young adult novels like Percy Jackson. They're naming these books because they haven't been assigned authors like Jane Austen or the Brontes in school. Students stand to lose a lot more than just a command of great books. Reading can cultivate a sophisticated form of empathy. It transports readers into the mind of someone who lived in a radically different context or time period. And according to the neuroscientist Marianne Wolf, deep reading stimulates critical thinking and self-reflection in ways that skimming or reading in short bursts does not.
Okay. So we got a problem. So if we're going to talk about trickle-down stupidity, I just want to know to these women, what is it that you call a system where you have college students who can't read and high school students who have never had to slog through Jane Eyre? I remember trying to read Canterbury Tales when I was in high school. My goodness. So, and if you're wondering how bad it is, here's clips going viral right now on X, where college students try to read some words on a card. This will depress you for sure.
The beneficiary tried to ambush the extortion scheme.
What does that mean?
I don't even know. I can't say that. Try to ambush the extortion scheme.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Wait, it says that these are UCLA students. These are UCLA students. They can't read. The beneficiary tried to embellish the extortion scheme. They can't read it and they don't know what it means. So if we're going to talk about trickle-down stupidity, I just want to know, what do you call this? A system that can't read. We got someone in the comments here that says My freshman in high school is about to read 19 books this coming year in classical conversations. This is what I'm talking about. That is fantastic. Go check out our friend Robert Borton's and his good work at Classical Conversations if you want to have children that can read. Okay. I don't know what we're doing right now. Let's see. And a couple of thoughts on this before I move on to the final part of this little rant. But if I had it to do over again, my best advice for homeschoolers is this very thing: focus on reading, make strong readers, avoid screens. It's very simple. Keep it very simple, very, very simple. Create strong readers and avoid screens. Promote imagination and playing outside and learning how to write and express yourself in writing. If you can do those things, you will have success in your life. You will give your gift a lifetime gift of being able to teach themselves almost anything. Those two things. Create strong readers and writers and avoid screens, promote imagination, and playing outside. If you just do those things, it'll be very simple. It's not expensive. It's get some phonics going, do what you got to do, but just focus on that. There's a lot of other things you can focus on, but if you focus on that, the kid can really teach themselves almost anything. Okay. Then there's one more clip here from these scholars.
I honestly, I'm just going to say this. I think it's selfish for parents to push a religion on a child and make them believe just one before they're old enough to hear about all of them or none of them and decide for themselves. I think it's all child abuse, honestly.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm the victim of it and perpetuated it. So I agree.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and for those of you that don't live in the Bible Belt, you don't get it like Pomps and Kylie and I do, but it's a really toxic culture. That mega church culture is incredibly toxic.
And it's everywhere.
The most fucked up people if you live in the Bible Belt, are the biggest. They're the ones who are posted on Easter, on Instagram. If you live in a Bible Belt state, when Easter rolls around, it's like dunkings, like these baptisms on the Instagram stories. I keep telling people, I'm like, why is everybody dunking? It's just it's so crazy. And it's like a full blown pool and everybody's in them.
Again, even if you don't go to a mega church, if you're like a normal Bible believing evangelical, they're talking about you. They're not talking about the United Presbyterians or the Presbyterian PCA, the mainline people, the progressives who have Jesus as their mascot. No, they're talking about us. That's who they're talking about. We're the problem. We're the problem, according to these scholars, and it's child abuse to take your child to church and to share the gospel with them. This is a toxic culture. And sorry, I missed one of the F words. I thought I caught them all, but I missed one on this video. And they also do not like baptisms. And I feel like as you're watching the clip, it's like, what's happening right now? Are there demons manifesting? They don't like baptisms. Like even the conversation about baptisms, it's like, what is wrong with you? This is, I don't know. Like I have my issues with megachurch culture too, and spontaneous baptisms, and we could talk all about that, but that doesn't mean it's abusive or toxic. Like, come on. Anyways, I'm sure that they would not consider their own beliefs to be child abuse. No, it's only if you're a Christian. They probably wouldn't even consider a Hindu family or a Buddhist family to be child abuse. It's only a problem with these kind of people if it is Christians. There was a little write-up about all of this on the Fox News website. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just wanted to read this one little part of it. This is a comment from one of the senior fellows at the Heritage Foundation, Corey DeAngelis. Somebody is a good follow on X if you're looking for that. And he says, he remarked that sending children to government schools for a majority of their childhoods was the really weird position. It's not weird to love your children and want them around. It's weird to outsource them to strangers employed by the government while pretending it's for their own good. The government school system is filled with documented abuse, bullying, fights, drugs, gangs, violence, and relentless socialist indoctrination. That's the socialization that these hosts are defending. Homeschooling isn't some radical new experiment. Parents teaching their own children at home is how human beings learn for thousands of years. The real experiment is the factory model of government schooling system that only exists because of 19th century Prussian militarism and 20th century progressive school engineering. Homeschoolers, by and large, they just want kids who can read. They don't want pronouns and socialism. They just want kids who can read a simple card when they go to college. They don't want to participate in the broken system of trickle-down stupidity of so many public schools. And now I know there's going to be somebody who's going to come on my comments. They always do. There's always one or two of them. Well, I go to a great public school and it's not like that. And it's not being fair. Like out here in the real world where you live in cities and you're not in a rural area. Okay. This is reality for a lot of public school parents. And they homeschool or they go find other kinds of alternatives, online schools and people that are getting really creative these days with micro schools and whatever it is, however you choose to educate your child, you are the person who is going to stand before God as being responsible for that. Okay. And it doesn't have to be homeschooling, but I think homeschooling is the archetype or representative of a group of people who are like, I'm going to take this very seriously. I'm going to participate. I'm going to be the leader. And this is the best option for us. But my goodness, my. So those are some thoughts about homeschooling. If you can make a way, do it. If you can make a way. All right. Tonight, I want to talk about a tribute to my dear friend, Dr. Sue Dykes. I don't think I've ever commented about her or her death publicly before. And we are coming up on, and it's hard to believe this, but the 7th anniversary of my dear friend's death. And it is also her birthday this week. So I'm going to try to get through this without being too emotional. And just share some lovely things with you about my friend, Dr. Sue Dykes, and the work that we were supposed to do together in apologetics. You've probably never heard of her. She's probably an apologist that you've never heard of before. But this is her and I on August 5th, 2019. And this is a post I made on August 5th. And it was, I think, 2 days after she had passed away. This is what I wrote on Facebook. I'm very sad to report that my very dear friend and rising star in apologetics, Dr. Sue Dykes, has died. She was coming to the United States to begin a career with our team at Reasons to Believe. I've been part of her journey from the very beginning. This trip was the culmination of years of hard work, including her getting a PhD in paleoanthropology at a very prestigious university in South Africa. All of that beauty, promise, and potential is gone in an instant. I can't even process this loss. I can barely process it here 7 years later still. Now listen, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business and make money. Why, you who do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. James chapter 4, verses 13 to 15. Oh, what a lovely friendship we had. We took this in front of the Reasons to Believe sign at their office when she had come to visit in 2018. She had come about a week after Monique had moved in with us. And since Monique was coming from South Africa and Sue was from South Africa, I thought it would be fun for them to meet. And I had Sue over to the house in June of 2018, and Monique made a South African dinner for her. We just had such a lovely visit that night. And that turned out to be one of the last times that I saw her alive. And Sue had started out as a Reasons Institute student. So in my former life, before the Center for Biblical Unity, I worked at a science apologetics ministry called Reasons to Believe. And back in 2004, I had started an online learning school. This is like before online learning was really popular. We had an online learning classes that I kind of created, where I took lectures and readings and created a whole classroom environment online, and students could go through the classes and they could earn a certificate. And eventually I got them accredited at major seminaries, at Talbot and at Southern Evangelical Seminary, at Regent University. And it was a very, very unique and special program. I'm not really aware of many programs where you can take classes through a parachurch ministry and get seminary level credit for it, the highest level of accreditation, not just Bible college credit. And I was very proud of the work that our team did there in building the classes. And Sue was one of the first students who went through the classes, and she immediately got on my radar because she took all the classes in 1 year. I couldn't believe it. She was found the classes through, like, she was going through her father-in-law's papers after his death, and she had found some reference to our classes. And she was kind of in a stage of life where she was a recent empty nester. She was probably about the age that I am now. And she started taking the classes as kind of something to do. And she just fell in love with paleoanthropology in her mid-50s. And what woman does this? Like, it's just not normal. And we just clicked as friends. I was probably in my early 40s. And I just watched her go through all the classes, and then I made her an instructor. And then she started on her master's degree. She went and did the hard thing of enrolling in a paleoanthropology program, where I think she was one of the only Christians at a very prestigious university in South Africa. And it went through the master's program and then did a whole PhD, wrote her dissertation, and graduated with a PhD in paleoanthropology. It's unheard of. And Christians do not go into paleoanthropology. It is absolutely an evolution-dominated area. And so if you are a Christian that goes into that, you generally hold to the standard views on biological evolution. Well, Sue did not. And it was because she had gone through our classes through Reason Institute and been so grounded in the biblical worldview that she was like, I wonder what would be possible if I went and got a secular degree in this. Like, would Christianity hold up? Would this creationist, old earth creationist paradigm hold up? And the work that she did in her dissertation was absolutely groundbreaking. And I was so excited that she was going to work on eventually turning it into a book. And she had a few chapters that were published after her death of her research in a book called Thinking About Evolution. And this is a project that she was working on at the very end. The book came out after her death. And just these were highlights from her work in her dissertation. But she had planned to write like a full book-length treatment, basically based on her research, and over to what she wanted to do was overturn the evolutionary framework of common descent and humans coming from hominids. And she had gone all around the world to study in person specimens. She would go cave, like there's this very famous cave of a hominid creature called a Naledi in South Africa, and it actually happened to be not that far from where she lived. So she went there, and it was like crawling in these narrow crevices to see where these specimens had been discovered and found. Like, she went there. She went to Australia and looked up the teeth of Australopithecines, and was her dissertation was on teeth, basically, and contrasting teeth with Australopithecine teeth and human teeth and other hominids. And she had a mastery of the paleoanthropological record. And here we are. Here's a little clip of 10 years ago of me interviewing her on a show that I used to do for my old employer. Here we are as a little segment.
Christians shouldn't fear that fossil record. When we talk to our non-Christian friends, we shouldn't try to defend the position that they're all fakes and frauds. We should say that, yes, there is validity there. And when we're talking to our non-Christian friends, we can assure them that we affirm the scientific record.
I think that's the main point to take away, because it's not in a Christian's interest to be seen to be just suspicious of science, almost for the sake of being suspicious of science. And it's also not in our interest as Christians, when we engage a scientist, to be suspicious of their work. And there's no reason to be. It's all very valid.
So that's just a little clip of us together. And those were the days. So I'm about 10 years younger there, and I'm looking at Sue, and she's not that much older than I am now. It's kind of crazy, but I think that what had happened was Sue passed away on the airplane on the way to America. She was coming here to Los Angeles to start a career as an apologist. She had made a decision. It was a very hard decision for her, and I kind of walked through that season with her of whether she was going to try to become a professor at the age of 60, and she was going to try to go kind of as a missionary into secular universities, or whether she was going to become an apologist and leave the academic world behind and kind of be rogue and come out as a Christian. And she had made the decision, after a lot of thought and prayer, that she was going to abandon a lot of her academic collateral that she had built up in her doctoral program, and she was going to go into apologetics. And so we did fundraising for her salary, and she was coming here to the States to start a career. Her and her husband, she was kind of paving the way. And then eventually she and her husband were going to, if the Lord willed, permanently move here. And I was so excited for the work that we were going to do together. I had reasons to believe she would have been truly a rising star very quickly in the apologetics world. So even though you've never heard of her, she would have been really important. Her work would have been really important and big, and you would have seen her on my podcast probably with some regularity. And in fact, when she was coming to the States, when she passed away, I had planned to have her on my podcast that very week. And I was just kind of getting going in the podcast, and we had started the All the Things show, and we had planned to have Sue on the show, and just wasn't meant to be. Wasn't the Lord's will. And so Monique and I went to LAX to pick her up. And that's when we knew that something dreadfully had gone wrong on the flight. and she wasn't there at the airport, and something had happened to her somewhere between Johannesburg and New York City, and she never got on the flight in New York City, and found out a few hours later that she had passed. And it has been a deep sadness in me for 7 years now, to think about all of the promise and all of the potential and all of the work that we had done together up until that point, and it didn't materialize. And I've wrestled over the years of like, well, why would God let her go through an entire PhD program so that she could die on a plane on the way here? Like, that to this day doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't. And I have to live in that tension of this doesn't make sense to me. What I learned from Sue's legacy and that I have tried to go forward with is I finished my education. I kind of, as I prayed about her death over the years, I really felt like one of the catalysts to me finishing my education was I wanted to follow in her example, and that it was okay to finish my education late, and that there was value in doing it to serve the body of Christ. And so it's one of the main things that kept me going through my doctoral program, was thinking and reflecting on Sue's legacy in my own life. I also learned from Sue to learn how to best articulate the research and people that I disagree with, their ideas, how to steel man their ideas to the best of my ability, watching her travel to other countries and crawl in caves and all the things that she did. That was all in the pursuit of how can I make sure that I am best understanding my opponent's arguments, even in the tiny details of the arguments. And so that's something that I really strive to do in my ministry. Another thing I learned from Sue and her legacy that has stayed with me is not being afraid of being in hostile spaces. She was always very brave and gracious. Hopefully you got a little flavor of her very subdued and very British personality there in the clip. She had this way of saying things in a very understated British way, but she could overturn the evolutionists' argument, as she would call it, the evolutionist, with amazing detail and data. And she was always so gracious and kind about it. She was often the smartest person in the room, but you'd never know it. She was just so humble and gracious and lovely. And if I could be a tenth of the woman that she was, I would be blessed. So Dr. Sue Dykes would have been 67 in just a few days. She had just finished celebrating her 60th birthday and had been taken on a trip to Croatia for her birthday by her beautiful husband. And hard to believe it's been 7 years. It was before the pandemic. It was a different place then. So she was a wonderful friend and defender of the faith. Yes, she was, Future. She was an amazing apologist. And I miss her. I miss her very much. So thank you for listening to my little story about my friend Sue and I. I was very blessed to know her. My children were blessed to know her. And she was very kind, especially to my older daughter, who kind of admired her greatly. She had an interest in anthropology and paleontology, and Sue was always a great person to cheer her on. So thank you so much for listening to my little story about my friend Sue. All right. I want to talk in the last few minutes here about a critical difference that I see between progressives and conservatives when it comes to engaging in public spaces. And this really directly relates to my observations about my friend Sue Dykes. And as I said, Sue went to a secular university. She did the hard work of getting a PhD at a secular university in a subject that creationists don't go to. They don't participate in. And typically, conservatives don't hang out in public spaces where there are a lot of progressives. I wanted to share with you a tweet that I saw last week that kind of typifies this mindset. I saw this last Sunday. This is from some random X account. I don't know who this woman is. Welp, I'm very sorry to say that the church I've been a member of for 36 years has chosen a new pastor, a woman. That's not the problem. Who is a No Kings protester and has a trans kid. I'm out. That's the tweet. And I saw this tweet and I thought, this is a great example of the difference between progressives and conservatives. Let me explain. Progressives have a vision that when they go into a public space, they are going to claim that public space for themselves. Almost at the same time, I saw this clip of a guy that Monique calls the Black Princess Man.
Everybody look at me. I'm getting ready to tell you something that's probably going to hurt your feelings, but I love you, okay? The parents are not your friends.
Your parents are not your friends. Just in case you missed that part.
Something that's probably going to hurt your feelings, but I love you, okay? The parents are not your friends. I'm going to say it again because I want you to hear me. The parents are not your friends, okay? They cannot be trusted, all right?
So there you go. You got the Black Princess Man in a public space. He's in a public school classroom. Pennsylvania College of Technology, it says on the lectern. And so here's this guy comes in, some kind of activist, and first thing he says is trying to undermine a child's trust in the people that are supposed to be the closest to them. Your parents are not your friends. And he just says it. It's like, this is what we're going to normalize. This is the thing. And this is how progressives act. Progressives have a way about them of, hey, I'm going to come into this space. I'm going to say the things that I think are true. I'm going to, excuse me. I'm going to engage in the crazy talk. And I'm here to stay. And I am going to be loud and just say the thing. But here's how conservatives think. When a progressive shows up in a conservative space or a place where conservatives are, conservatives leave. They leave the space. This woman says, I'm sorry to say that my church I've been a member of for 36 years has chosen a new pastor. The pastor's a woman, No Kings protester, and has a trans kid. I'm out. This is a critical difference between conservatives and progressives. Progressives come in and shift the center and normalize deviancy. Conservatives leave. Christians who are conservative, first of all, need to realize that the public education space is only a safe space for the queer and the queer affirming, okay? It has been engineered that we are not meant to be in that space. The world of those podcast hosts what they want to normalize and center is not a space that is for us. Okay. But we have also bear a level of responsibility because we have left. We have abdicated the education of our children to the state. But Christians have also, many of them have left public education. We get letters like that all the time from people who are like, I'm so glad I'm not in that space anymore. And so there are consequences for all of this. Yes, I am for homeschooling because I am for freedom and independence and parents being leaders in their kids' lives. But I always say this is a two-front war. I don't necessarily think that Christians should abdicate presence in public spaces. If you are a Christian who's working in a public space, in local government, in public education, working in like the water supply or electricity or any of these kind of public utility companies, you're a missionary in an area that many Christians have abandoned. And there's a guy named, he goes by Redeemed Zoomer online, and he has this kind of mindset and project of encouraging conservatives to stop leaving progressive spaces. So his project is he started attending a local PCUSA church. You know, the liberal Presbyterians. He and his buddies started attending the church, and they're trying to shift the center back to historic Christianity in this very liberal space. This was his response to the woman's tweet. He said, "This is a sinful mindset, and it's why progressives take over every historic denomination. She needs to repent." Now, I don't know about that part. I don't like it when people get online and start saying people need to repent. Like, you're not their pastor, you're priest, their priest or their bishop. But okay, I get kind of the core of what he's saying is this is a particular mindset. I am not defending what is happening at her church, but I am calling out the conservative instinct to retreat and separate without any push for reform. Like, this woman had been there over 3 decades. Why not stay and fight? Like, she's probably of an age where she doesn't have children to protect. Why not stay and fight? Why not get involved in the leadership? Like, what was she doing? What was her role? My old church in New York got a heretical pastor, but several of us stayed and got her replaced with an Orthodox one. And it became the only gospel preaching church in the whole town, getting dozens of unchurched people baptized. Conservatives see something they don't like in a church and they leave. Progressives see something they don't like in a church and they change it. That's why they always win. Conservatives need to stop being individualistic cowards with an Anabaptist ecclesiology. I think that's a very interesting and provocative point. Because we get letters all the time at the ministry of, oh, such and such happened in my church, I'm out. Okay, well, were you in leadership? Are you on the elder team? Are you on the staff? Like, is there any chance of you staying to fight? Like, what happened with this drift? But what often happens is people are just sort of silently in the pews, watching the thing happen, watching it kind of deconstruct, and then they get sick of it and they leave. And there's trade-offs there. Like, at what point should I have a missionary mindset to stay and try to fight? Because if the conservatives always just leave and concede ground to the progressives, then that's why we keep losing our institutions. You've seen me try to engage in my own fight for Biola of renewal, trying to encourage the leadership. I'm just kind of out here as a lone voice in the wilderness. Now there's more people speaking up, but I've been doing this work since 2020. And for a long time, many years, like, people thought I was exaggerating and and slandering, and it's really not a real problem. And I was trying to fight for institution renewal. I wanted to stay and fight. I wasn't going to concede the ground. Okay. Now, that's not to say that there aren't times when there are practical realities. Like if you're at a PCUSA church and they're very liberal, like I don't know necessarily if that's going to be the healthiest place to raise children. And be in the youth group with all these very progressive teenagers, like that might not be good. And so I could see like you got to think carefully about this. Like, how am I going to get shepherding and counseling if my elder team are all like super progressive and woke and I'm going through a hard life situation? Like, I get all of those practical considerations, but couldn't some of us not just tuck tail and run? Like, couldn't some of us try to fight for the center, to stay and fight for our historic institutions? Like, couldn't some of us do that? I think Redeemed Zoomer is on to something. This sort of, he used to call it a Reconquista project, but after a while he stopped using that term because he felt like it was too warlike. But that, like we're trying to, can't historic Christians like maybe try to go recapture some of these institutions that used to belong to us that we've conceded? Like some of them that are kind of in a state of decay. Like, couldn't there be some people who have some courage and some backbone to stand up and fight and do the hard thing and not let all of our institutions slip away into the hands of progressives? Because when progressives come into public spaces, they don't have any problem being an agent of change and going up against resistance and fighting it and enduring it and the long march through the institutions. But why do we as conservatives not do that more? These are, I think, it's just something to think about. Yes, this is my position too. I say protect your children, but also stay involved by going to local school board meetings, voting, or running for school board. How about that? Or running for a local political office. Yeah, future. And this is what I'm saying is, if a church votes 95% for the insert heretical ideology here, then at some point you just need to be in a biblical church. And that's what I'm saying is, like, I understand there's some practical realities about needing shepherding and discipleship and all of that, but it's tricky. Like, if all of us leave, and I have a teaching on my channel of like the progression of how progressivism comes in. Like, if you're at a stage 1 or 2, that your actions are going to be a lot different than if you're a stage 3 or 4. Like, there's some evangelical institutions that are kind of between a 2 and a 3. They need some intervention. They need some conservatives to stand up and shift the middle back to sanity, back to the Bible. And so what could we do to have earlier interventions? And can we think about ways of intervening sooner and also more courageously and more forcefully? I think Southern Baptists have done a good job of contending for our convention and institutions. Yeah, I think that's a great example that they did that in the 80s. And now it seems like they're trying to have another renewal movement of really trying to stand. Drift is the default. Drift will happen. But if there's always a mass exodus, then we kind of give over our institutions. Some people have to stay and fight. And sometimes you're right, Jane. Sometimes you have to back off. Sometimes it's too far. And I get that. And so there's wisdom there. There's things to think about. But I think that this is a part of the conversation that I don't hear a lot of Christians talking about, is sometimes we need to stay and fight. Sometimes we need people to stand up, and everyone can fight a little bit differently. I've talked about this in the Biola thing, in the Biola Chronicles, of we all can fight differently. I've chosen to fight using my public platform. Other people have fought in the Biola situation by writing letters or withholding donations or having hard conversations, or people on the inside who have advocated for restructuring. There's a lot of different ways to fight. But if we don't have institutions that we want to fight for, I just don't want us to give up so easily. This poor woman, if she's been there for 35 years, like there had to be other things than just this one pastor showing up all of a sudden. Like, what is the rest of this story? And why not stay and fight? Because if this is an outlier, maybe there's still other conservatives there that she could join forces with. Progressives are good at gaining ground fast and every inch feels hard. Yeah, because drift is the default. But that's why we need Christians serving on school boards and in local politics and in universities and being like my friend Sue and going into areas that need more Christians. I talked to a woman last week or a couple weeks ago. She called the ministry, and she was in a profession. She says, there's almost no Christians that I've met in my profession, and there's no Christian content, and there's no Christian professional development. And I said, well, I guess it sounds like you're going to be doing some pioneering work, taking and applying the principles that she's learned through our ministry into a whole new area. And that only happens because we have donors that keep Monique and I deployed in full-time missionary in ministry as missionaries. So those are the things that you don't see, the behind the scenes. But this woman was like, there's literally no Christian content, no integration in my specific field. And I said, well, I guess you're going to have a lot of work to do. You've got a lot of work to do, and you're going to be writing some professional development things, and you're going to be maybe starting your own continuing education program. I don't know, but like, we need Christians with vision and imagination, and that are willing to do hard things and stand their ground. We have to be discerning enough to recognize the beginnings of the drift and then nip it in the bud. That's a very great point. I've said that many times. Yep. All right. Thank you so much for joining me tonight for the Sunday Night Potluck. I hope you've enjoyed it. I always enjoy this time together, and I hope you have too. If you have ideas for topics you'd like me to cover in these little meandering rambles on Sunday nights, just let me know. I would love to hear from you. And with that, I hope you have a great week, everyone, and grace and peace.